Wednesday Wanderers, it's Ranger Erin, and today we are wondering about who used to live here. So this is our question about what animals used to live here but are extinct now. And we can go back really far back in time. We can go back to not too far ago. We're going to go back to our last ice age. So we're going to go back to about 2 million years ago to only 11,000 years ago. So there's a big chunk of time in there where we had a lot of animals roaming around this area, what is now Kentucky and North America and even South America. A lot of animals used to be here but are no longer here. And we call this whole time frame the Pleistocene. So the Pleistocene was an ice age. So when we talk about an ice age, we're talking about a time that it is colder all over the world than it is right now. And that means that our summers were cooler and shorter, and our winters were cold, really cold, even colder and much longer. And then on top of that, we had these giant ice blocks called glaciers that crept down south. They almost made it to Kentucky. They just almost barely touched Kentucky, but normally they're way up north, up in Canada. So they were a little bit further south. So during this time where we had the ice age, we had a bunch of animals out here, and we're going to take a look at a few of them. All of the animals that we're going to look at are all going to be mammals, like this camelops, which is the ancestor of our modern-day llama and alpaca. We also used to have giant beavers, much like their cousins, the North American beaver, which is pretty small. The giant beaver was almost as big as a human. The glyptodon was like a really big armadillo. So big, it was almost as big as a small car. And you've probably heard of the woolly mammoth, which is like a really big elephant that was hairy and had huge tusks. It also had a smaller cousin called the mastodon, which is not quite as big as that woolly mammoth, but just as furry. There were smilodons all over North America, and these were sometimes called saber-toothed tigers. The giant ground sloth has a cousin that we know as the tree sloth, but these were so much larger than the tree sloths that we know. During this time, there was the Paraceratherium, which was the largest land mammal of all time. The short-faced bear is bigger than any bear that we have roaming around today, even bigger than the polar bear. So you probably noticed that a lot of those animals had some things in common. Most of them were giant. They were huge. Some of them are just bigger versions of animals that are still here today. Some of them are just completely gone. But these animals, they were huge. A lot of them had big claws or giant teeth or big tusks. And these were some adaptations that helped them to live during that really cold time. So scientists are still trying to figure out why were animals so big during that time, but some scientists think that it's because it's better to be bigger when it's colder, because you can hold on to more heat when you're big. You think about how big a walrus is that swims in really cold water, how big a polar bear is. They're big because it's better for them. They can hold on to more heat. And when you're bigger, you also have room for more fat, and fat is good when there's not a lot of food. And if you've got longer winters, you're not going to have as much food. So now you got some space to store some food on your body in the form of fat. So 11,000 years ago, all of these animals went extinct. And what happened is that we had a climate change. So we said that climate was colder. A climate change is where it changes to something different. And it was really cold, and it came into what we have today, which is a bit warmer. And these animals, they had these adaptations for living in a cold area, and suddenly that wasn't so good anymore. The climate has changed here on Earth many different times for different reasons. So it's changed because asteroids have hit the Earth. It's changed because plants learned how to live on land. It's changed, right now, it's changing because of human activity and burning fossil fuels. But the reason that the climate changed 11,000 years ago was just the normal wobble of the Earth moving around the sun. So it just wobbles a little bit, gets a little bit closer to the sun, a little bit further, and right now we got a little bit closer to the sun, which meant we got more light, and more light means more heat, so it warmed up enough to melt all of those glaciers, and all of those animals, it just wasn't good for them anymore, so they ended up going extinct, and extinct means no longer here. So all of them are completely gone. When you go out on your hike, we're gonna go on an ice age hike, and you're gonna hike out and you are gonna imagine what the forests look like during the ice age. So a lot of our plants that are here right now were also here during the ice age. So you can look out and see maybe there's something that's here that looks like it belongs to that ice age. Maybe a giant fruit that looks like it might be there for a giant herbivore. Maybe some giant thorns like our honey locust that we talked about that needs those defenses for a giant animal. So you're going to look for different signs about those evidence of the ice age. But you can also look for some things that just would be different. So if you see a deer trail, imagine what it would be like if you saw a mastodon trail. Probably be a little bit bigger. Would you see big old animal tracks out here instead of tiny little raccoon tracks? Maybe it would be a giant raccoon track. What else would you see that might be a little bit different? It would definitely be colder, so it would feel different. Would it smell different? Imagine yourself in that ice age time. For an indoor activity, you're going to use a little bit more imagination and creativity. You are going to draw an ice age creature, but you're going to make this creature up. So you're going to think about an animal that lives out here today, and I want you to turn them into an ice age creature. So what are those things that we talked about? Maybe make them giant. You can add tusks or claws or giant teeth. All those different things that a lot of those ice age creatures have. Maybe they're super hairy. What does your animal need to survive in an ice age? So I chose to take my groundhog, a really cute small animal, and I made it giant. So in my pretend ice age groundhog, I called it the giant groundhog. This is my human for scale, and it is way bigger than that. I also thought, hey, this is an ice age groundhog. I'm gonna add tusks, because why not? And I also added giant claws, just like off of that giant ground sloth, so that it can dig around in the dirt even better as its giant ice age self. All right, well, thanks for joining me this week. If you want to share your really cool animal that you turned into an ice age animal, please go ahead and send that to me. If you've got any questions about some things that you found on your hike and you're thinking, I think that this might be an ice age thing, you should let me know. I'll look into it. Otherwise, I'll see you all next time.